Hi, and thanks for joining us for another episode of Beyond the Pink Cloud. This is your host, Dr. Alice Kirby. And with me today, I have a repeat guest to the podcast, which is very exciting. I have with me today Mr. Justin Sunseri. He is a licensed marriage and family therapist, and he is taking Instagram by storm. I think he's probably quadruple millioned his followers since last time. And he uses the hashtag Stuck Not Broken.
Yeah.
And he's doing some great work in the world. So thanks for being here, Justin.
You're super welcome. Now, am I the first repeat guest?
You are the first repeat guest. So, I mean,
my day is complete. I was hoping that was the first one. Yes.
Nice. Yeah, you are.
Genuinely excited about that. I'm very excited about that.
I am too. And I always like talking to you. So I was messaging you the other day, just picking your brain about some other stuff. And I was like, hey, come on back. So thanks for just saying yes.
Absolutely.
That's great.
Absolutely.
And I'd love to get your take right now. We're in the midst of, quarantine and a lot of people in isolation, and you're also in California. So we're on the statewide sort of lockdown. Just curious what your take is really on what's happening with people's systems right now.
First off, I think I'm surprised at the recognition of how important it is to connect with each other. And I think just in the media, with government, I expected it just to be like, stay home, get used to it, good luck. But there is a recognition that like connecting with each other is super important. And I'm seeing that. I don't do a whole lot of media and social media consumption, but I do see it out there. And I think it's outside of like the therapeutic community. It does seem like people get that it's really important for us to connect. And now, rather than demonizing technology, we're actually embracing it, which I'm actually really excited about, because I don't like to demonize technology. It does a lot of really good things. And that stuff, like you and me talking right now, I get to talk to an adult. I'm like super excited about that.
Let the record show Justin has just put his children to bed.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. My wife goes to work every day. I'm working from home. She's doing public health stuff. So she's in an office, doing a lot of coordinating kind of stuff. My kids are home with me, and I don't get a whole lot of adult time. So without this, I don't know if I'd have that. You know what I mean? Like, because we're taking the quarantine stuff pretty darn seriously. So I think people are appreciating how important it is to connect with each other. And in person's obviously ideal, but even something like this or over the phone, hearing another voice, it just to help like keep your sanity, like to keep some level of connection, some level of feeling safe. I think it's very, very important. I think people are getting that. And I think for me personally, like I'm really appreciating that. I like alone time. I do really well when I'm alone. Mm-hmm. And I think I've had my fill. You know what I mean? Like I'm ready to, when I went out tonight to pick up from a couple of stores, just some groceries. And I'm like, oh, more adult time. I get to accept bags from somebody. You know what I mean? So I'm like, oh, I get to smile at people. I get to hear their voice. Like I'm really going to soak this up. And rather than rushing through it or minimizing it, I'm like, no, this is important. I'm going to really soak this up while I have it. And I think people are appreciating that more. I'm worried about people. I don't know where they're at. I think for me, I get a little stir crazy after a couple of days of non-interaction. Going outside to walk has been extremely helpful. Going outside with my kids to ride bikes, like I'm really appreciating that stuff a lot more. I think people are going to drop down into like this anxious flight place, but I don't know. Some people might get super upset in more of an aggressive place and say, F this, I'm going out. Some people might get super like shut down in more of a depressed, detached, numb kind of place. I don't know. I don't know where everyone's at. And it's probably a big spectrum of that, of how that looks for everybody, but hopefully we're doing things as much as possible to ground ourselves, to connect with people we do have in our home, or even by phone or whatever it is. Like hopefully we're connecting with people as much as we possibly can. It's extremely important. I think that like that connection with real people, and then also going outside, I think are absolutely key. Going outside, looking up at the sky. I've spent some time just staring at the sky just for a couple minutes. I'll look up and just kind of take in the colors, and I love looking at clouds. And so like that and just feeling the air and like all those things, just to kind of really help ground myself and stay connected to the world.
Yeah, I think the time in nature creates some normalcy in our systems. Absolutely. Especially because I think even we are doing more technology, which I agree with you. I really love it. And I'm so grateful for platforms like Zoom, which is relatively easy and free.
Yeah. Right.
And just to see other people's faces, I think does create some of that safety. But to be able to get outside every day and feel your feet on the ground, and I live by the ocean, so I look at the ocean a lot and the trees and the parrots, and to me it feels just incredibly stabilizing, and like, oh, I'm still here, the world's still here. Like it's not all completely 100% changed. I think it creates a sense of normalcy.
Yeah. You're right out. This is the ocean, right outside your door. Is it walking distance?
Yeah, we can see it from our living room
What?
window. I
Oh my
know.
God.
I know. It's
Lucky.
great.
All right. No, I'm sure it is. Like that's like real nature right there. And I think a lot of us are settling for parks, and even that's shut down recently. I think
Yeah.
public parks are like not doable right now. But like if you have trees, if you have sand, if you have something that you can like interact with, and that's why I think I'm spending some time looking at the sky. I have a lot of concrete around me,
Mm.
and we do have a park across the street, but we don't go there anymore. We've just chosen because we see people interacting, and I guess that nowadays that's not a good thing. So we're like, we'll stay clear and just do our own thing. So we're on concrete a lot, and I really miss being on grass. I used to love running in the grass with my kids without my shoes on, and
Hmm.
I really miss that. But if you have like real nature outside, that's huge. But if you don't, there's still plenty of things you can do to
Yeah,
appreciate just
definitely.
being in the present moment.
I think even if you have a small patch of dirt or grass,
Something,
or like, or
something.
one tree you could go and look at and just listen to the birds, and even if you are in an
Yeah,
urban environment, there's usually something you can hang on to.
yeah, absolutely. And rather than saying, well, you're lucky because you get to have this, but it's like, no, we all have something probably. Maybe
Yes.
not all, but I get there's some people who don't, but for the most part, there's something. There's trees. There are sounds of nature. You can feel the air no matter where you're at.
Hmm.
There's probably a slight breeze. You can feel all these little things. If you really pause and notice them, they go a long way.
And I think I'm curious what your take is on that, like trying to get to that place where we can actually pause. And I've been talking a lot about nervous system regulation, and I've done I did like a class on it, an online class, because I feel like it's so important right now. And because I talk about it so much, and the vernacular is really comfortable for me. But I always love hearing other people explain like what nervous system regulation is, and just so people can hear it from different ways, because my audience has heard me explain it. So I'd love to hear, and maybe that's a little bit of a jump, but I think we're fine. I'd love to hear, your take on what is nervous system regulation, and then maybe we can talk about some ways that are, again, like we were just talking about, ways
Yeah,
that are helpful to do
I think
that.
recently the present moment has been coming up more and more and more as I write and talk about this stuff. Being in the present, if you're in the present moment, if you're consciously in the present moment in your body, you are regulated enough to be like you're in the present moment. Your nervous system, you're in a safe and social state for the most part, probably. If you could be in the present moment and tolerate the present moment and actually appreciate it, or at least be in it, that's to me that's regulation.
Mm-hmm.
It's when we're dysregulated that we're not in the present moment, and now it's more about fear or anxiety or anger or numbness or whatever it is. Like all those things take us out of the present moment, out of our bodies in a way, and it becomes more of this fearful, mobilized, dysregulated kind of place. But if we exist in the present moment, to me that is a regulated nervous system. That's a nervous system that has access to the ventral vagal social engagement, safe and
Mm-hmm.
social state.
That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, so I think the present moment has been coming up more and more and more. I'm like, oh, we talk about climbing the ladder in our safety system a lot, polyvagal ladder. But really what it comes down to is if you can do that, that means you're in the present moment. So it's to me, the present moment and self-regulation, those go hand in hand. There's like, we're saying the same thing basically, I think.
Yeah, I like that. And I think that's true, because when we are able to be present, that's all that is. So there isn't a lot of dysregulation happening.
No.
I think when we can fully be in our bodies and be present, we're just accepting whatever's happening. That's with the somatic experiencing work. I feel like that's one of the biggest things is, oh, this is happening. Okay, I'm here with it. And
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
it's all okay at that point.
It's witnessing, it's observing it, it's being curious about it, non-judgmentally. And I think
Mm-hmm.
even if you have that stuff going on, those feelings, if you're more mobilized, if you can witness it or observe it or be curious about it, you're still in the present moment. Like you still have access to the present moment to be able to notice what is happening within you without judgment and with curiosity, without evaluation, but and with curiosity.
What are some ways that you Oh, I think I have a two-part question. When do you notice that you are in the present moment? Like, do you have some moments where you're like, I'm really here right now, or do you feel like it's more of a continual state, or even like, what do you recommend to the students that you work with or the patients that you work with to help them identify? Oh, because I think sometimes people aren't sure.
I think it's extremely dependent person to person. I'd be curious if you
Hmm.
disagree, but like there might be some universal things that we can all do, maybe like, but I really think it's a person to person thing. Like, what is it that excites you, or what is it that calms you? What is it that helps you connect with someone else? And I think these things are so subjective. Yesterday I was doing no Sunday night I was doing a live stream and talking about the present moment. And someone said earlier today I was in the present moment, and she said I was doing air guitar to, oh, it was like David Bowie. I forget who it was, David Bowie or something like that,
Hmm.
or air guitar to something or other, circa 1985. It was some 1985 album. She was doing air guitar, and she was just like in the moment. And for her, that was being in the present moment and using that, maybe that energy she had, but really enjoying it and being in the moment, having fun, connecting with herself. But that for me, that might not be my thing. For
Mm-hmm.
me, touch is extremely important. Like right now, as I'm talking to you, I'm holding things, and I have a couple of things in front of me, just to sort of, I think visually also is something for me. But I have things in front of me that I can hold as I talk to you to make sure that I'm grounded, and I can
Hmm.
feel like the ink on this marker I have. These are markers I love. I have tons of positive feelings associated with holding these because I love to
Hmm.
color and draw. But I can feel like the ink on the barcode of the marker. You know what I mean? But for you or for someone else, they might be like, "That's ridiculous. That doesn't help ground me whatsoever." But for me, this is my present moment right here, and
Yeah.
this totally helps me be in the present moment. So I think it's extremely subjective,
Hmm.
person to person. I like to look at the clouds. Other people might be like, "That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard." I love looking at shadows, shapes, how they move. It just does it for me.
Hmm.
The next person, they're like, "What are you doing?" You know what I mean? It's just that's
Yeah.
so. What that means, person to person. I think there are probably some universal things like being in nature. I think generally is
Yeah.
a present moment cue of safety, biological thing. Like we just connect with nature, right? So I think there's probably some universal things, but I think there's also some really interesting subjective things that are different between nervous systems.
Yeah, I like that you bring that up. And I think that's a nice invitation for people too who are interested in practicing more of this work to really be that curious explorer and find out, what does feel good or what does help you feel more grounded or,
Yeah,
I don't really like to use the word safe, but essentially in a nutshell, where do you feel like yourself in your body? What are you doing and where are you? And just start to notice those things.
that's exactly it. And there's things that we're pulled towards. I think that we're pulled towards. And when you do those things, like, but really like notice what it feels like and be in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I like to color and I could or draw, and I like to use markers. I like to ink things with black ink. But I can say I like those things and go do it. But that's a lot different than like really noticing the experience and being in the moment and really
Yeah.
noticing what things feel like, how my breathing is, all like it's like the things you're pulled toward. Really notice what it's like to do those
Mm-hmm.
things. I think, and that can easily we're not talking about like look, close your eyes and meditate and look at painful stuff. These are things that people enjoy, like the things that you enjoy that you're pulled towards. Really let yourself feel what it's like to do those things.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's the kind of the money spot for a lot of people.
It is, yeah. And if
For
you
all of
like,
us, yeah.
yeah, and I think with therapy and whatnot, the idea is to look at, or traditionally the way we've looked at this is more of a cathartic model, like look at the pain, talk
Mm-hmm.
about it until it's no longer painful or whatever. But with this avenue, it's more of like a building a distress tolerance, building the strength of the vagal brake. I talk about that on my podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And the vagal brake is your ability to tolerate distress or to grow your window of tolerance. And one
Mm-hmm.
of the ways of doing that is by tapping into those positive things, those calm, those in the moment, connective kind of things, more and more and more, and really be in the moment, like really let yourself be there. And if you do that, what you're doing is strengthening the strength of your safety system, your social engagement system. You're strengthening all that circuitry basically. And that's going to help increase your distress tolerance. And then when you do tap into those painful things, you're going to have a safety sort of anchor. You're going to be more anchored in your safety system at the top of the polyvagal ladder. And I think those painful things are going to be a lot more tolerable, or you'll be able to do it in doses rather than like getting way sucked into it and having it be out of control. So doing these positive, joyful things, connected things, calm things can make the other stuff, I think, a lot more tolerable.
Absolutely. And I love the way you just explained all that, because I feel like I talk about that, but from a completely, it sounds very different when I say it.
Right.
So
No, I get it. Yeah.
I loved hearing that. Are you familiar with something you said made me want to bring this up with Steve Hoskinson and organic intelligence?
I've heard that recently, organic intelligence. And then I went
Mm-hmm.
to his, I want to say does he have a podcast?
He does, but I think it's old. It's called The End of Trauma, unless he may have a new one, because I feel like
I
that there's a,
listen. No, I
uh-huh.
listened to like an episode of that. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah,
not super familiar with it, but I have some familiar with it.
I heard him at there was like an informed trauma conference, a virtual summit a couple months ago, and I saw him speak there. And one thing he said was that we've become adapted to this therapeutic model where we want to feel bad before we feel better. And so that alone can be almost dangerous to the system. Like we go in expecting to have these cathartic moments and then we feel better. And what you're talking about instead, and what I really love to talk about and to teach people is this, let's just gravitate towards what feels good and let's explore that and swim around in it and really notice it. Not to say we don't work on the other stuff.
No.
But that it doesn't have to be this link of always, I'm going to feel better after I feel bad.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's not about ignoring the bad stuff. I know both of us, we probably don't like to call it bad, but it's just in general, it feels
or
bad.
good. Yeah.
Right. It feels bad. It feels good. But so that's the basic idea. But they're just feelings. It's not. It's neither good nor bad. I don't think. But I'm totally with you. It's not about ignoring the painful stuff. It's just about we'll get there when we're ready to. And people go into therapy, and the therapist will say, "Tell me your stuff," but that doesn't mean the person's ready for it.
Right.
And if they go into that and they feel those hugely traumatic feelings, it's just reinforcing the traumatic state. And I want people to exercise their safety system like they would a muscle by going to the gym. Like, let's tap into that positive stuff. And the other stuff's going to come up. Like it just does. It's going to come up. Those feelings they have to come, work through someone. That dysregulated state, the stuck sympathetic energy, all that trauma energy, it has to work through. So it's not like we're ignoring it. It's going to come, but we're going to handle it and manage it more from curiosity and acceptance versus let's just get through this and bite the bullet kind of thing. It's a much different viewpoint, I think.
I think it is too. And I've even in some of the somatic experiencing classes, there'll be, maybe one or two people that are kind of like, well, when do we get to the point of this? Like, when do we go in and like hit it? And I have to like explain this to my patients a lot too. Like, okay, this may seem really, really slow and gentle. And why am I asking you to tell me where you feel like yourself? But this is why, so that we can build this resiliency within your system.
Well, I'm wondering if part of that comes from it. And I fell into this. Was when I first learned about Peter Levine and saw him do what he does with a couple of his videos online. He's just working miracles. Like he is. What I mean? He talks about Nancy. Yeah, and like I know I'll call him a master at this. But like his story about Nancy, his the video online with the veteran, and he just like asked him to move his jaw slowly, and all of a sudden the guy's like cured of this PTSD stuff. At least that's what it looks like. So I'm like, well, how do I do that? But it's even in his writings, he does acknowledge it's not typically that simple. And his work with Nancy was like the first time, and since then he's worked more slowly. He'll build the other stuff first. It's not just like a one-time thing, I don't think. And so, but you see that, and it's like, well, I want to do that. I want to do that one piece of it, but it's typically not. I don't think it's just that one piece of it where people are walking in, moving slowly, and all of a sudden they're discharged all that energy. I don't think that's the way it works.
No, I think not.
But
usually.
I'm not an SE practitioner, so I'll learn for that.
I did this archetype class with him, and it's the first time I've been in a class where he was teaching recently, a few months ago. And it was interesting because we had a few different case consults come in and we'd get a background on the patient, and then Peter would work with them. And it was really interesting to see him work because he's so subtle. And I think he sort of broke things down. And then it was nice because he would explain to us what he was doing, but it's like he would take things in places that were so subtle but so meaningful. I think he truly is like, he is the master. He created the work. So
I know.
But it's neat to watch other really skilled people do it as well. I work with Dr. Abby Blakesley, is who's been my primary teacher. And she's very good at structuring, like, this is what's happening and here's what's happening next. But she's kind of a magician too with it.
I don't know if that's a natural thing or if they train themselves to do that or just learn along the way, like, or a combination of all those things. But there seems to be, when I watch just with Peter's stuff and the way he speaks, like it just seems so fluid. Like he
Mm-hmm.
just gets it and he's always in the present moment and
Mm-hmm.
just like always ready to help someone get unstuck apparently.
Yeah, I know. That's great. And I love that you're using the hashtag stuck not broken. And I'd love to just ask you a little bit more about that and about these various states of stuckness that we may find ourselves in, and like how to identify what, if we even are stuck, like what shows up in someone's life when they're stuck. And I know that's incredibly subjective, but
Right, like they know. People know
mm-hmm,
if they're not happy with their life and they want to do better, but they don't know how to make it happen, or even if their best attempts, it's just not happening. They know. They know
mm-hmm,
it's like something. There's a wall. There's something in the way. I
mm-hmm,
want. I want to move forward. I want to do whatever it is. I want to connect with myself or be in the present moment. I want to have a better relationship. I want a new job, but I'm not making these things happen. Like what's another, like the self blame and judgment starts to
mm-hmm,
fall in. Like people know. I think people know if they're stuck. And when I say stuck, so I prefer stuck, not broken, over healing. And I think ultimately we're talking about the same stuff,
mm-hmm,
but I don't think people are broken. I don't think as a therapist it's my job to fix people. So healing doesn't work for me personally.
mm-hmm,
So stuck does, because I think every single one of us has an inner drive to connect with each other, to connect with ourselves, to be in the present moment. So, but something gets in the way, and it might be trauma, it might be uh, attachment, parenting kind of stuff. It might be, I don't know, a whole bunch of stuff, right? That takes us out of the present moment and more of into a dysregulated nervous system state. So we get stuck in these like flight places, fight places, or shut down or freeze. We get stuck in these defensive states, but we're not broken. We're just stuck. That
mm-hmm,
energy either gets stuck in there, or our ability to go from shutdown, like this depressed, numb kind of place, and allow the energy to come back, that gets stuck. Like we when it does come back, it turns into like anger or super irritable, and then we kind of go back into shutdown again. So we get stuck either climbing the ladder, or the energy from a trauma gets stuck within us. But the issue is being stuck. None of us, I don't think, are broken
mm-hmm,
or irreparable at all. And I think there's an inner drive just on the nervous system level, or even deeper maybe, but on that nervous system level, that there's a drive to be safe, and to connect with other safe mammals. That's the way I it just makes more sense to me. And I think it's a lot more compassionate, a lot more hopeful as well.
mm-hmm.
Versus if I say someone's broken, it's like, it doesn't seem to have as much hope for me. And
Right.
it puts me in this position of, like, I know as a therapist I'm supposed to be an expert, and I get that, but it seems to really like unlevel the playing field for me for some reason,
Mm-hmm,
versus me saying, hey, I'm a nervous system that is not perfect. So are you. You're my client. I'm the therapist. I bring the expertise of the professional work. You bring the expertise of your life. We meet in the
mm-hmm,
middle and we help you get unstuck. To me, there's just a lot more equality and hopefulness there. And it just implicitly recognizes that all of us are biologically driven to connect with each other, and
mm-hmm.
just stuff gets in the way. That's it. And we get dysregulated. But that's really it. It has nothing to do with some sort of irreparable harm that was done to us, or being broken, or anything like that.
Yeah, I really like that. I'm sure your patients probably like that too. It really is quite feels empowering for the patient.
I hope so. And that's a lot different than me telling them like, you're just born this way.
Mm-hmm. There's something
And
really wrong with you. It's going to
there's
take a
some
lot of time to fix.
this might be a lifelong condition,
Uh-huh.
and or
Ugh.
or there's a genetic abnormality or things I can't test for, but I know therapists say.
Mm-hmm.
And you say those things and it's like, well, I'm the expert and I'm decreeing this, I'm deciding this without evidence. And that's a whole lot, that's a much different that's a much different relationship to me, versus I fully believe in you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you say stuck not broken, that's an unconditional positive regard thing, which is very important in my field. And like, how can I be of support to you? Like that's it, versus like you're just born this way, and now we got to manage this for the rest of
Mm-hmm.
your life. And that's not very hopeful, and it's not necessarily true either.
Yeah. Yeah. I like what you said about leveling the playing field a little bit.
Yeah.
Just it makes it, especially when you work, well, when you work with anyone, I'll leave it at that. I was going to bounce something off of that. Do you ever find that that people have trouble letting go of the idea of being broken, or are people generally receptive to it, like to,
I
oh,
think
okay, we can
I,
work through this?
I think that people can accept the idea, but then owning that on an emotional level
Mm.
is much different. There's things that make sense to us, and like my mind goes to, I work with parents and parenting groups, and one of the fundamental truths that I give them in a parenting group is that we don't control our children, and they make their own choices. All we do as parents is hopefully influence them to make really good choices, but once choices are made, we react to those choices. That's what we don't control what they do. And so I run through this, and parents are like, yeah, I get it. It makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time as they get it, inside they're like, anxiety goes way up. So it's like, I get it, but emotionally, I'm definitely not accepting that. Even though it makes logical sense, in my body, I don't accept that.
Mm-hmm.
And so in my groups, I normalize the heck out of that, and I say, you're probably super anxious right now just hearing that idea, but I got you. We're going to run through this. And so it makes sense on a logical level, and then we have answers for them, and it helps them calm down as well. So I think there's things that we get, but can we accept it on that more of emotional level?
Mm-hmm. Oh,
i think
sure.
I think
Yeah,
people struggle with that.
absolutely. I think that's the harder one to conquer. A lot of times our logical brain can make sense of things all day long, but
Yeah.
our bodies walk around holding on to something else entirely.
Yeah, so people can hear this and be like, yeah, I'm stuck, awesome. And then the next time that they have some anxiety or something, they're going to beat themselves up, and it's like, well, you lost the whole idea. What I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what you're feeling right now is some stuckness, or maybe the possibility of getting unstuck, and maybe it feels like anxiety, I don't know. And rather than owning that idea and applying it in the moment, you went to, oh, why won't this go away, and I hate this so much, and blah 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 blah. And
What's wrong
so
with me?
exactly, yeah, all those things that we say. But if you recognize it as stuck, not broken, not there's something wrong with you,
Mm-hmm.
it feels painful, yeah, I get that, but you're stuck. And if you can remember that, that might be a piece of coming back to the present moment. And that's a lot different than the other options.
A lot different. Yeah, or a lot different of even now I've got to go call somebody else, or go see my therapist right away, or do a million different other things to change what's
Yeah.
happening right now. Even if it's like, oh, I've got to go do like yoga, or I need to go meditate for 5 minutes. I mean, those are great practices, but I think again, if we can just pause and be like with what is happening and remember that, remember like, oh, this is stuck, or hey, this is an old pattern that's back again. Hello, I know who you are. And
Yeah.
I started picturing this big green dragon for my own particular stuck pattern. And that's something new. I mean, I don't know where that was something. Yeah. That
I love that though.
I love it too. And I was just having a real stuck moment, like an hour before we got on here in the tub. And then I was like all sad and feeling all these things, as humans do. And I remembered this dragon idea. So I just like put him in the tub too. And then he was kind of like a pal. And then I asked him to go away, and he did. And I was like, oh,
Nice.
great. Here we go.
I love the visualizations that people don't
Mm-hmm.
consciously come up with, but just come up with.
That are just there.
Yeah, but
No.
it says something about the person. And in therapy, I love when we talk about the somatic pieces of it, and I'll invite them and say, like, if something pops in your mind, like, let me know. And there's
Mm-hmm.
some super interesting things that people come up with. And a couple of my clients are like apparently more visual than others maybe, and they get
Mm-hmm.
some so fascinating like things. And then they'll say, like, it feels like, I don't know, a cloud. And I'll say, well, tell me what the cloud feels like, or what's the cloud doing, or what are you doing on the cloud? Is there anybody with you? We develop the image, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just like it brings them more in their body. Even though we're talking about these images,
Mm-hmm.
those images represent, I think, what they're not feeling. or
Mm-hmm.
what the next step is. I think, and I'm still working this idea out, but I think the images have a lot to do with what's going on somatically. And I think Peter Levine, I know he would say the same thing with his SciBAM
Yeah,
kind of
yeah. I was
model,
just
right?
gonna ask about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely,
So
definitely.
yeah, so I'm very limited with my understanding of SciBAM just based on his books, but I love playing with the images in session
And
and like developing them.
yeah, absolutely. And for people that have difficulty with the sensation or with some of the body-based stuff, being able to bring that image in, and then it's like you
Yeah,
can check in with the image and then check back in with the body. And
yeah,
it's, and even doing it for myself, for my own practice and things that I talk about and teach, it's incredibly powerful because sometimes you can ask people a million times, what are you feeling? What are you noticing? And you know it's
yeah.
maybe they just don't have that dialed in, or it's harder for them. It's hard for some people, so the image
It
is a really
really is.
beautiful way. Yeah, it is.
Well, all these things, the images, the bodily feelings, the thoughts, all of these things are fluidly pieces of kind of where people are at and where they're kind of where they need to go. And I think sometimes the images are clues as to where we need to go next.
Hmm.
Um, but like it's all part of the same thing, and we sort of divide it up. Like this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm feeling, as if they're distinct. These are the images I have in my head, like these as if these are like distinct things. And conceptually, it makes sense to break them up, but really they're really fluid. I think they very much interact with each other. And in therapy, people have the moment to fluidly go amongst those things,
Mm-hmm.
and it's super fascinating to see people non-judgmentally see how they feel, see what images pop in their mind, see what memories come up, see what thoughts they have about it, all those things. It's super neat to see them sort of dance and like fluidly go through those things.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It is.
And to feel different at the end generally, and
Yeah, yeah.
typically a little bit better, although I don't love using those words either. But
I got you though.
I'm curious too about situational stuckness, and I don't know that I have a specific question about this, but what I'm noticing is with what's happening with the COVID-19, and we have this kind of global situation that maybe some people are feeling more stuck with it. And I think what I'm seeing happen with, particular people that I'm working with and with myself to some extent is some of these things that have maybe been around for a while and we've, possibly like worked through or become, more at peace with in our bodies and our, the fluidness of our systems, but that this event is almost like triggering another level of like stuckness where these things are showing up for us in a different way. Does that make sense?
Kind of. Where I went was I'm really wondering what this is gonna look like at the end of it, and I hope the end of it is obviously soon.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm really wondering if people are going to emerge from their caves and have a deeper appreciation for each other and for the sunlight. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I'm really, really wondering if, and I'm hoping that's kind of what happens, and that we have this deeper appreciation. This is an opportunity globally for that to happen. I don't know. And that's a
Mm-hmm.
silver lining, I guess, from all the pain, but this is a global thing that every
Mm-hmm.
single one of us, more or less, is feeling. So at the end of this, is there, what are we left with? Like, I'm really curious about that. So
Yeah.
that's what popped into my mind. I don't know if that had anything to do with what you said, but that's
That's
that's where.
fine. That wasn't much of a question. It's me musing for a few minutes.
Yeah, ditto. Yeah, yeah. So I threw that out there,
I
but
like
that's my
that.
hope.
I think it's a
I
good
think
hope.
there's
And
going to be a lot more children born in about 9 months as well.
yeah, yeah, that's what they say.
Yeah,
Talk about being in the moment, though. Sex is a good way, I think, for a lot
probably.
of
Yeah,
people. Or I
yeah.
think orgasm is. It's not. Gosh, I talked to this fascinating doctor a couple of weeks ago, and she was saying that there's only two times for women when we get out of this need to try to like analyze or put everything in pieces. And one, I think it was something like that, or multitasking, and one of it was orgasm. And I forget what the other one was. I think it was like some kind of a meditation type thing.
Really?
Yeah, it was with Dr. Jessica Drummond was the one telling me that. She does a lot of work with women's hormones, and she's a
Oh, interesting.
public health
I
therapist.
want to get someone on my podcast that can speak to that. I don't. I work with teenagers, so I don't do a whole lot of the.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not. That's not
Sure.
coming up a whole lot.
Yeah.
But I really want to get someone on the podcast, and there's a couple people I have in mind that specialize in like sex therapy, but also are
Mm-hmm.
polyvagal informed.
Oh,
I'd
that's
love to get
great.
on. Yeah, but like that could easily be one of those ways that I guess
Yeah.
someone could like connect or be in the moment or release some tension maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, especially now. And to that extent too, I know you talk about play a lot, and I really like that because I think as a society, we've lost a lot of the sense of what it is to really play. And even as children now, I feel like there's a lot more structure I see in I don't have kids, but just in the kids around me in my neighborhood and friends with kids and my nieces and nephews and all of those things, it feels much more structured, or there's the potential for it to be much more structured than like when I was a kid and we're playing in the woods and
Oh
there
yeah.
wasn't, yeah. And then as adults, I think a lot of us really aren't sure how to play. So I'm just curious, especially now when we have more time and the kids are home, like ways to introduce play, as an adult and with your kids.
I think parents, the easiest way is what's fun for you and include your kids in it. Like that's really it's just that simple. And but if that's not your thing, if you don't know what your fun thing is or you don't like playing with your
Mm-hmm.
kids, and I work with plenty of parents who are like, I don't play. Well, you don't play maybe with the ways that your kids are doing, but kids will follow your lead. So if you're curious about something, and play can be baking, it can be just trimming the bushes in the backyard. My daughter and I used to do that when she was like 3, 4. I had
Mm-hmm.
these like clippers, these huge like clippers, and she had her own huge set of clippers, and which was very dangerous, but she was good at it. And like at 4 years old, she's out there like doing some heavy duty like clipping with me. But it was our bonding time, and it was work. It was definitely work, but we also were playing in a way because we were having a good time. We were bonding with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So involving kids in things that you would do anyways, that could count as play. You're socially engaged, but you're mobile, and that's what play is having access to your mobilization system while you're safe and social.
Mm-hmm.
So we call that play. It could be so it's just play can be shared work. I've thought about involving my daughter in my podcast since we're home together,
Hmm.
and I'm not sure how to do that, but that could be play. You know what I mean? And I think she'd like that.
How
But
old's your daughter?
10 and a half.
Okay.
Yeah. And she's done a couple of intros for me in the past episodes about parenting. But it's so there's things that like you naturally like to do. I love playing catch. I love playing catch. It's like the best thing in the world. If you give me a ball and a mitt, I'm in heaven. If you give me a football and someone to throw it with, like it's just the best thing.
Hmm.
So I know that, but I'm also curious about what my kids like to do. And right now, my 4-year-old son, he's super into like jumping off of things and posing like a superhero, I guess.
That sounds really fun.
Right? So he goes like, do you want to see my cool jumps? And so I could do that with him. I haven't yet, but I could do that with him and he would love it. But I could also like watch him and cheer him on and like, you know what I mean? Like pump him up. And for him, that's play, even though I'm not doing it
Mm-hmm.
yet. I probably will. But like that counts as play. You're socially engaged. He's mobilized. I'm just sitting there, but he's mobilized. And as long as he has my attention, that's play. It counts. Doing a puzzle can be play. Even though you're not super mobilized, like you're still socially engaged and you're working on something together. That's play.
Mm-hmm.
Playing video games can be play. There's a lot of mobilized, even though you're not like running around, that mobilization system is definitely kicked on. It's pretty intense.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been doing a lot of Mario Kart in this house, and we love it. It's all four of us can sit down and play Mario Kart, and it's a blast. Like we genuinely have a good time. So there's like what play doesn't mean what someone thinks it means, and
Mm-hmm.
there's so much room of what that could look like. And so it's again like, what do you pull toward? Like parents, what do you pull toward? And bring your kids along. Like get them involved in it. I love to draw. If I have uh, pencils and paper for my son over here, and I'm over here doing my thing, we're good. Like we're doing it together. It counts as doing it together. Or we could work on the same piece of paper together, which I have a lot of control issues about, but still, because it's like, don't do that. But
Yeah, sure.
let that go. And then that counts as play. That's play. And all these things but it has to come from genuine fun and interest.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't plop your kid down with markers and then be on your phone. That's not play.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't count. So it has to be something you're genuinely interested in and you're not distracted by anything else. you're actually in the present moment doing that thing with your kids or with your spouse too, whatever it is. And that's it. That's all there is to it. It's not that complex. It's not that intimidating. It's just about having fun and following what is you're actually interested in, and then involving your kiddos along with it.
So simple.
It really is. It really, really is. And I work with parents who tell me that they don't play. And no, like, let's get a little bit creative about it. There's things you like, right? Like there's things in life that you enjoy. So do those with your kids. If you can, like, do those with your kids. My daughter's not going to talk about borderline personality disorder with me on the podcast, but she might be able to do an intro or an outro or something like that. Like I can involve her in some way if I was really creative, but there's things out there. It's just how creative can you get? And if you really want to, you'll figure it out. Like you'll get creative. If nothing else, whatever it is that you're doing, like in those moments where you're thinking, oh, I should play with my kids, but I'm on Facebook right now. In those moments where you have that realization, stop doing the thing that you're doing, stop doing the distraction, put it away, make yourself get bored. And when you're bored, you'll get really creative, and your interest in your family is going to grow way up, and you'll just start doing stuff. And catch is a great way. If you have a balloon, blow it up. Kids are entertained for hours. Knock the balloon in the air, see how long you can keep it in the air until it falls on the floor. They're good for hours. You know what I mean? It's really not that complex, but put away the distractions, allow yourself to get bored, and then you'll get creative to relieve your boredom.
I think that's a big piece. Allow yourself to get bored, because we so infrequently do that.
Very true. Very true.
I think even as adults trying to figure out how to play, I think that's really solid advice, is just to take a look at what you're interested in, see if you can involve your partner. Is there common interest, and can we do one of those things?
Yeah. Yeah, we got the Nintendo Switch, and my wife and I have been playing Mario Kart on our own a couple times. And then we played Animal Crossing, and that's just like, Animal Crossing is a super peaceful, cute, like fun game. No action. It's not intense. It's just calm, and it's just like the perfect thing to play with the kids in bed. It's just pure peace.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to take up too much of your time because it's kind of late.
I have more for you if you like, but no, I'm good too. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to bring up one more thing, just because I do work with sober women, and I was having a conversation with a woman today, and this kind of circles back to something I was going to say earlier about with the stuck, not broken piece. And she mentioned that, she's been alcohol free for a while. She doesn't identify as an alcoholic, and I'm not really even sure what she put in place to get sober. We didn't get into that, but she said one of the really striking things for her was reading something in Laura McCowan's book that said, you're not the most complicated person on the planet. And she said that really struck a chord with her, and like enabled her to make some changes, and I think it's a similar concept of you're stuck, you're not broken. And I'm just wondering if you could, I know you don't work a lot with addiction, or I don't think you do.
I used to.
Okay. So I'd love to hear your take on that.
On that in particular?
Or how right now, and maybe I'm jumping around, but it's okay. I'll finish up in a second. I know right now the issue of drinking for people that are sober or that want to be sober is a challenging one, with being more isolated, and with liquor stores are open and it's really easy to access, and people are bored, but they're not exercising these other avenues of creativity or safety, so they're turning to this substance, which they're potentially, I'm not saying everyone who drinks is doing this, but some people probably are using it to try to create some of that regulation, or to feel better, or to, I don't know, create a different state. So speak to that in any way you'd like.
Well, I think the first thing you said about that you're not that complex, or not the most complex, it's just interesting, the things that like get through to us, the messages that just sort of click. It's just interesting, and maybe that person that was the message that sort of, I don't know, got through somehow and unlocked something within her. And I think that's just fascinating, what those messages are that kind of that might unlock something, and I wish I knew the formula for that, because I say some brilliant stuff in therapy, I think, right? And it's so
I'm brilliant all day long,
right? And then the next time we meet, I'm like, oh, that one thing I said, game over, like healed. or unstuck, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
And no, it didn't work out that way. But they'll say like, there was something you said last week. And I'm like, oh, I know what it is. And it'll be something that I just didn't even, that it's something that stuck with them that I didn't care less about. Like it just wasn't, it didn't seem important when I said it, or I might not even remember what it was, but there was something I said that wasn't what I thought I said, something else entirely that just clicked for them and helped them get to the next step. And I wish there was a formula where we would know those little unlocks. And I think that they're out there. And for every now and then, someone will get those little unlocks, and it's like they get to the next step. You know, they climb their polyvagal ladder a little bit, maybe, or maybe it might reduce mental clutter. I don't know, but that's just interesting.
It is.
Yeah, and then what was the second part about? The addiction and boredom.
Yeah, and it being harder right now with isolation for people.
Yeah, I think it's a lot more of kind of what we've been talking about with being in the present moment, and rather than waiting for the problem, proactively bring yourself to the present moment. So what I mean by that is waiting until there's some sort of crisis and then doing a grounding skill, I think is the wrong way to go. I mean, do it, like do that, but before the fact, before there's a problem, before there's a crisis, before there's some sort of huge craving or potential for relapse, I want you to, like, people to be practicing these grounding skills. I don't know how much, but maybe as much as possible. But like, practice these things well ahead of time. Build that social engagement system and the safety system. Build that as much as you possibly can well ahead of time. No, don't just hang out and wait for things to get bad and then be like, oh, I better do a grounding skill. Like, that's a good idea. That's fine. But at that point, it's like, I don't want people like putting out fires all the time.
Yeah.
And like proactively bring yourself to the present moment as much as you can in a fun way. I'm not talking about like meditate and look at painful stuff. I mean, like, have fun, play with your kids, draw something, squeeze some clay, whatever it is that your thing is, dance like Patrick Swayze, whatever, you know what I mean? Like, do those things that bring you connection and safety and fun and joy. And then when the crisis rolls around, yeah, it's probably still going to suck, but the next time it might be a little bit more tolerable, hopefully. The capacity to like be with that pain or that intensity, that the capacity to hold that in your skin a little bit longer, it might be there, like that's my hope. So I think the more you do that, I think the better off you'll be. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I think that was very, very well put.
Oh, nice.
And like the bonus of all that is it's pretty fun to practice being present when you're enjoying yourself. It's really fun.
It can be. So I think I don't know if people are going to leave here and be like, yeah, I got it. I'm going to do that. We think it's brilliant, but they might not have clicked with them, right?
It's true.
So there might be a mental obstacle there of believing that or feeling, not be a mental thing, but a feeling of like, do I deserve that? Irene Lyon says that we have to believe we deserve things. I like that a lot. But do you believe you deserve it? Do you believe you're worth that? I do. I know you believe that about people. I have no doubt. So everybody else is on board. That one person that's hearing this, they need to believe that. And if they can't believe it, like, well, we do. So someone out there does. And I believe that about every single one of us, just intrinsically, that we are worth that. Even if we don't believe it, like we deserve it. We're worth it. We're capable of it. So if those mental blocks, like those are big. Those emotional blocks, the judgment, that's a feeling, that's a state of being, like, it's huge. I know. So they can hear us and be like, yeah, that makes sense. But there's all this stuff that's blocking that, So it's like, if you can notice that, the green dragon, maybe notice it and be like, hey, I see you. I'm not going to kick you out. You're welcome to hang out with me, but I'm also going to go play with a balloon with my kids. You're welcome to come if you want to. Whether you do or not, I'm going to go do this and have fun. Like, if you can be with the green dragon or whatever the heck it is and not judge it, not be mad at it, and just say, hey, I see you. I'm not mad at you, but I'm going to go squeeze some clay. I think it's, you might be a little bit better off.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay.
Well, thanks so much for chatting. It's lovely. It's so fun to talk about all these things.
It really
I
is. I had a
do
good
it.
time.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Me too.
I look forward to the third time.
Yeah. We'll see. It'll be
Oh, that's not,
midnight.
now all my hope just got sucked out of me. Oh man.
Oh, well, luckily you know how to deal with it. So I trust you'll be okay. You're a skilled practitioner.
I've got my fidget, so I'm good. Yeah.
Oh, you got all kinds of stuff.
This is a Galactus Lego that my son left in here. So yeah.
Oh, cool. You got lots of toys.
I do. Yeah.
Is there anything you want to pitch or tell people? Talk about
Oh,
your
sure.
podcast. Do some self promotion here, please.
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity. I do
Of
the
course.
Polyvagal podcast, and we talk about, or not we, my co-host is no longer my co-host, so it's a solo podcast now. Mercedes was ready to go on to another little journey, so I'm super excited for her. And so it's a solo podcast. It's called the Polyvagal Podcast. So I have that every single week. I upload at least one episode. And recently I've been talking about the DSM diagnoses in comparison to the polyvagal theory. So today was narcissistic personality disorder. Before that, last week was borderline. So some super interesting things. I've had a lot of fun with it. So I have that. JustinLMFT.com. Lots and lots of resources there. And I have a Patreon with even more, lots and lots. I have like 7+ hours worth of audio. Wow. It's just sitting there waiting to be listened to, waiting to be binged. And I've been binging it myself. And I'm like, my God, is there more? I can't get to the end point. There's a lot of stuff. And so there's a lot I have going on. And I think JustinLMFT.com is probably a good starting point.
It's a great site. And who's your audio for? Like if people are listening to this and they like hearing you, is it meant to be, I know obviously it's not a replacement for therapy, but is it like a nice addition for someone who is in therapy? Or?
Well, what I'm hearing is people that are trauma survivors, they love it. And they get a lot of, it helps them in their process. It's a resource. Great. But I'm also hearing from therapists that are using my podcast as a resource in therapy. And so them and the client have this like shared language, and they might go into the stuff that I talk about in the podcast. So it's just a resource. It's a resource for people. And it I guess it has some of those magical unlocks. I don't know what they are, but people write to me saying like, this was a big part of me getting unstuck or healing or whatever they want to call it. So it seems like it's helpful. It's not therapy, but people are finding it therapeutic. I think I could say that. And it's also, I think it's just a fantastic resource for people to learn more about all this stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
That's for anyone. I mean, the teachers listening to it, therapists, I mean, survivors, parents, what do you call them? Body work, massage therapists. Like there's a huge range of people who are just in the wellness sphere and are listening.
That's great. Well, thank you for doing that and for providing that service. I know that's how I thought to contact you earlier this week, as I had just sent somebody to your site and to your podcast. Thank you. And yeah, definitely. It's like you said, a great resource.
That means a lot. The somatic experiencing people, practitioners and whatnot. A lot of this is Porges polyvagal theory, but I incorporate a lot of what I'm reading from Peter Levine also, and just from my own work and therapy. Like, so to have that buy-in means a lot to me. So thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. Well, I'll put all your links in the show notes, and thank you again for coming on.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.